Что ж, 3 часа, Ялла.
Right, it is 3 o'clock and we are opening our session, the open plenary session dedicated to the same problem but in a different focus. The problem of the preservation of the World Heritage Monuments of UNESCO, archaeological monuments of Palmyra. We have a number of new participants and colleagues who are with us today. I must apologize for repeating some of the things I have said earlier. So today we have the Day of Palmyra. It began with the roundtable of technical discussions. Now we have the plenary session and then 3 exhibitions to be open today. Allow me to demonstrate the invitation ticket for the exhibition. The exhibition 2 Palmyras, real and virtual. Then here is another one, Palmyra Archaeology and Palmyra Architecture. Palmyra yesterday, today and tomorrow. So we'll speak about them in more detail. And here is the book we published. Of work in order to preserve cultural heritage in Palmyra and not only in Palmyra. The general context we live in is cultural heritage is besieged, and it's a whole set of conferences organized by the Getty Institute, and some of you have taken part in those, and it's the context within which the World Monument Fund works, and UNESCO and many other agencies and organizations. Many are concerned with the history of cultural heritage and the different new aspects that emerge. And my article, Cultural Heritage Besieged, was published today in the St. Petersburgske Vedomosti. So it is dedicated to Palmyra and the situation in the Caucasus. And the situations in both places require monitoring of restoration and destruction. And technical means today make it possible to carry out this survey. So we're responsible for protection, we're responsible for preservation. Usually this concerns the human rights and culture rights, and possibility to protect the development of terms is very important, and the issue of the use of force for the fate of the monuments. Another context is the scientific restoration context, which is combined with architectural restoration. Strict rules of restoration. At the same time, it's the experience of such cities as Moscow and Kaliningrad were from scratch, but on the basis of national need and national identity, monuments were being restored. It's also the problem of the Middle East and Near East reconstruction. There is also some experience of that, and this is what we have discussed. It's the experience of practical work, monitoring, principles of restoration, involvement of the, making use of the local experience, restoration and economics and economy and social issues. For Palmyra, we were actually talking about that. The parallel context, and that comes from the article, and I think this is something to be discussed today, is the context of the Caucasus, of Transcaucasia. I think many of you probably have read the Derbent appeal, and the situation in Karabakh requires continuous monitoring, involvement of a lot of people into monitoring. And it's necessary to remember that the protests, the loud protests, very often lead to further destruction. That's the example of Palmyra, Mali, and others. And so the documentation, discussion concerning restoration, because restoration is always an interpretation of a monument from a certain point of view. In Palmyra, again, we are coming across the problem of churches and mosques that used to be on the territory of the ancient town. So we suggest these recipes, and we discussed and commented some of them. Monitoring, for example, monitoring, discussion, commenting. So all this is a sort of a manifestation of a public eye, so to speak, that monitors the situation with the site, with the monument 24 hours a day. We also at the round table touched upon these matters, and there were 4 recommendations put forward, and I would like to repeat them. One recommendation is to use the UNESCO experience and different campaigns of UNESCO accumulated over decades, different monument protection campaigns. The second recommendation and principle is not to be in a hurry, because our technical opportunities and possibilities these days make it possible to create the virtual models of what is being restored and what is to be conserved and preserved, and also possible to work with these models. So all the suggestions, all the proposals can be modeled, remodeled with the help of a computer, and the decisions, final decisions, should be taken on the basis of deep work and extensive work. Third, the museum as an institution, that is very important for tackling of different issues. And that's why we believe that for Palmyra, it is necessary to recreate the museum. And this is a priority, because the museum will accumulate a lot of things and will be a center of coordination. And the fourth recommendation indicates that it's necessary to have a very good mechanism of interaction with Syrian governments, Syrian public opinion, citizens in the city of Palmyra, so as to avoid the social tension that might have occurred. So this is the result of our discussion, and so we would like to hear some proposals coming from the participants of the session. Allow me to give the floor now to the governor of St. Petersburg, Alexander Beglov. His address is recorded. The Day of Palmyra is going to be a significant event at this difficult time of the pandemic. The St. Petersburg scholars are turning our attention towards the monuments of Palmyra in order to preserve the monuments of cultural heritage. Our city is often called the Palmyra of the North because of the beautiful monuments and ensembles we have. This is a tradition of the architecture. And we have historically Palmyra deserves very high praise, and the destruction of the monument of Syrian Palmyra was a tragedy for the world in 2015. The scholars and researchers of the world are looking for ways to restore the ancient city, and these professionals from the Institute of Culture of the History of Material Culture and the State Hermitage take part in that. In spite of the difficulties that Syria is coming across, St. Petersburg researchers have carried out thousands and thousands of aerial shots, and they have created the most precise 3D model of ancient Palmyra. The work of the St. Petersburg researchers is extensively recognized in the world. Palmyra went through thousands of years of existence, destruction, wars. It's very important to make sure that the work focused on the restoration of ancient monuments is continued. Any well-educated person, cultured person, should support the restoration of Palmyra. The fate of this city is so closely connected to the tragedies of war. I wish you great success and great achievements in your work. Thank you. Thank you, Alexander Dmitrievich. I would like to read the address of the Special Representative of the Russian Federation for the Development of Relations with Syria, the Ambassador of Syria in Syria from Russia, Yefimov. I'm happy to welcome the esteemed participants of the Days of Palmyra. Particularly, I would like to express my gratitude to the organizers who, under these rather difficult conditions, managed to involve in this event important Russian, Syrian, and researchers and experts and public figures and politicians from different countries of the world. The final liberation of this ancient city by the Syrian army with the support of the Russian military in March 2017 indicated that there was a great change in the war against terrorism, and there was a victory of civilization over barbarian world. Now, Russia, in cooperation with Syrian friends, contributes into the solution of this problem of restoration. The Russian researchers have created a large-scale 3D model of Palmyra in order to facilitate the work on restoration. I'm quite sure that international community, and first of all UNESCO, should not be aside from that. Russia is willing to take part in the pulling together of global efforts for this noble goal, the restoration of the ancient city and other Syrian monuments which suffered from the hands of the terrorists. I'm quite sure that the specialists who are together here will strengthen the international cooperation, and the exhibitions will make it possible to acquaint large audience with the masterpieces of Palmyra. I wish you fruitful work. And now a few words will be said by the ambassador of the Syrian Republic in Russia. Звука нет.
Замечательно. Приветствую слово посла Сирийской Арабской Республики в Российской Федерации господина Риада Хаддада. Глубоко уважаемые участники конференции, глубоко уважаемый Михаил
Борисович. Esteemed Mikhail Borisovich, for me it's a great honor to take part in this important event organized by the State Hermitage with the support of the National Commission for UNESCO in the Russian Federation and the Institute of the History of Material Culture of the Russian Academy of Science in order to cover the issues of the protection of the monuments of Palmyra, its cultural and historical heritage, which is so important for Syria, for the Syrian people, and for the cultural heritage of humanity. You know, Palmyra, other Syrian cities, was under systematic attack from the terroristic groups that worked against Syria, including the terroristic organizations of ISIL. And neither people nor artifacts were able to find protection against them. And they attacked the archaeological, historical heritage of Palmyra in order to destroy the civilized world. And that's why the war that Syria waged against the terrorist groups was the war against those who stood against civilization. But thanks to the fortitude of the soldiers of Syrian army, with the support of the Russian military forces, Syria was able to liberate Palmyra from the hands of the terrorism. And this city proved once again that it is stronger than any occupying force. And we would like to pay tribute to those who perished in the battle, the representatives of the Syrian Arab army and the Russian military forces, and of course to Dr. Khaled al-Assad, director of the National Museum of Palmyra, who was executed by the ISIL terrorists. protecting Palmyra and its monuments. Thanks to him, many of the artifacts were protected against the terrorists. I'm very happy that we have the meeting today, and I'm happy to be able to discuss different issues associated with the protection of Palmyra after this systemic destruction and looting of its treasures, particularly since the restoration of the monuments, the problem that concerns humanity, and I would like to express the gratitude to our friends in the world, particularly in the Russian Federation. And specifically, I would like to thank Mikhail Borisovich for the fruitful cooperation and for colossal efforts for the restoration of Palmyra and protection its never-ending beauty and grandeur. And finally, I would like to thank all the participants and organizers of the conference and assure you that Palmyra will do everything possible to get rid of terrorism and will be the pearl forever, for thousands of years to come.
Юрий Эдуардович, ваше слово.
Да, добрый день. Меня слышно?
Yes, good afternoon. I hope you can hear me well enough. Yes, and thank you, Mikhail Borisovich. I would like to thank everyone, my friend Bushnaki, and
Рад всех приветствовать от имени.
I'm happy to welcome everyone on behalf of the Russian Federation for the UNESCO Affairs, and I would like to welcome all the participants of the conference dedicated to Palmyra. At present, when the world comes across such serious problems, economic, political problems, and the problem of the pandemic, it's extremely important to involve the creative potential of the international institutes into the overcoming of different consequences of those negative events we come across. And of course, UNESCO plays a very significant role in that, because UNESCO leads the world towards the more humane world. And at the roundtable discussion dedicated to the restoration of Palmyra, it was mentioned already of that, and the ex-president of the Russian Academy of Science, Vladimir Fortnev, an outstanding person. And we're very sorry he died. And yesterday, the former director of the Pushkin Museum died. So that's a terrible situation. Of course, we're losing so many people. But on the 16th of November, as you know, we marked 75 years of UNESCO. And over this long period of time, UNESCO has always been on the side of peace and trying to safeguard peace and promoting different ideas of education and culture that are part of the statute. And one of the important projects of UNESCO is the preservation and protection of cultural monuments. We can see that many of the cultural monuments are either being destroyed or threatened by destruction. And that's why this mission is extremely important. In this context, it is so important to follow the provisions of the UNESCO Convention on Protection of Monuments, different conventions, particularly the Convention on the Protection of Historical Monuments in case of military conflicts and and the protection of cultural and historical heritage of 1972. And it appeals for that, and the calls for that we have already heard, because there are so many monuments that suffer as a result of military actions in Iraq and in Syria. And then, of course, the Karabakh conflict should also mention. UNESCO is trying to provide as much support as possible in order to protect the monuments. And on the 18th of November, Director General suggested to have the respective missions in those locations in order to have the lists of cultural heritage, in order to have the sort of preliminary and early lists with the intention of providing protection at a later. So we are thinking of creating a special fund for the support of these endeavors in Karabakh, for example, in order to protect the religious monuments that suffer as a result of vandalism and military actions. And a very important issue is still that of the restoration of the destroyed monuments in Palmyra, in Syria. And Mikhail Borisovich has come up with the initiative to restore the museum within the framework of an agreement or a memorandum signed in autumn 2017 by the Hermitage and UNESCO on protection and restoration of the monuments in the areas of military conflicts in the Middle East. And I think it's important to remember what the practice of UNESCO was in the earlier years and address the Director General of UNESCO with a proposal to declare UNESCO the international campaign for the restoration of monuments. And also would like to draw your attention to the following, that a very important component of that, in the restoration of monuments, Palmyra, is the issue of education. The 70% of the activity of UNESCO is focused on education. And so I think that without education, the Palmyra would never have been created, but a person with education would never have destroyed it. So the experts of the round table, I hope, will of course considering the different charters, can come to the conclusion that Palmyra can be preserved, and thus the question mark can be easily removed, and we can just use the exclamation mark instead. So I would like to draw your attention to one other thing. At an international conference dedicated to Narin Kala, he came up with an appeal, the Durban appeal, supported by participants of the conference. I think that the main provisions of it, namely the idea to create a special center for the monitoring of the historical monuments, the idea to create the database for the sites in the area of conflicts should be part of our appeal to UNESCO. And finally, I would like to wish all the organizers and participants of the conference fruitful work, interesting discussions, and I would like to express my hope that we meet again personally. That's something that we miss a lot. Thank you very much.
Так, есть у нас запись? Включает, да? Хорошо. Сейчас включается.
Esteemed Mikhail Borisovich, Natalia Fedorovna, Maxim Borisovich, colleagues, friends, I would like to welcome all the participants of the Russian Cultural Forum and the participants of the discussion on the possibility of the restoration of ancient Palmyra, treasure trove of ancient civilization. The monuments of Palmyra are recognized as historical and cultural gems of the World Heritage by UNESCO. Palmyra is a symbol of global culture without which the civilization is impossible. It's even in the Soviet textbooks on history, there was the image of the Palmyra Triumphal Arch, which was tragically lost in 2015, and we witnessed that catastrophe in those days when the terrorists destroyed this monumental Triumphal Arch and other buildings of that outstanding site. After 2,000 years of existence, the present-day terrorists deprived us of that gem. At present, we need to state that the global community is not in a hurry to carry out the necessary work and does not pay that much attention to that issue. There are political and geopolitical reasons for that, and most probably they will stop being topical in the near future, contrary to the restoration of the cultural heritage of Syria. We should not deprive our descendants of this heritage, and international community, we hope, will remember that the civilization heritage is more important than the transitory political situation. That is why the forum is so important. We value your contribution into the mobilization of the international efforts aimed at the restoration of the Palmyra monuments following the international conventions, and with the support of the Russian Center for Culture in Damascus and with the participation of the State University in St. Petersburg, we launched a competition with money prizes, which is quite rare these days, student works among the Russian-speaking students. And they are to examine and monitor the less-known monuments in the areas they live. And we believe that this is a very important part of the information activity focused on the protection of the monuments. It's not a secret at all that quite often masterpieces of the ancient world come up at the auctions for sale. And we know that many of the artifacts are being stolen, and we are helping in Damascus the Russian representatives of UNESCO and archaeologists who monitor the situation locally, and this field work is most important, and we're very proud of Russian professionals who were able to create the 3D model of Palmyra that reflects the present-day status of the architectural monuments in Palmyra. This is the first step towards restoration. I wish you great fruitful work. Rossotrodnichestvo is always with you, on your side. Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues. And now the speakers will share with us the experience acquired in Syria. And allow me to give the floor to Luis Monreal, Director General of the Aga Khan Foundation for Culture. He will speak about the restoration of cultural heritage in Aleppo.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. I will try to keep the time that is allocated a maximum 10 minutes, and I will try to speak slowly because I am admiring the energy and the talent of our translator, Natalia, and I think you must be exhausted by now. Let me share perhaps the screen with you. You are. I am going to speak about how a urban conservation and rehabilitation program in Aleppo can impact the social and economic life of a community, could have a positive psychological impact also in a post-war society. I think this could be interesting in imagining how could be the impact of restoring parts of the site of Aleppo and developing the museum, which will be of benefit to the community. Our organization, the Aga Khan Trust for Culture, has been present in Syria for the last 20 years. And we were working not only in Aleppo, but in other sites, in Damascus, in some of the castles in the north, in the Crac de Chevalier, etc. But all this work was interrupted by the hostilities. And only in 2017, when the situation became stable in Aleppo, we were back to the city. What you have here in the screen is a very well-known picture of the old city with the limits defined here in the World Heritage List. And the yellow and red dots are the impacts received in this historic area. Towards the left, you have here a detail of the southern edge of the citadel. Here is the citadel in the middle, here is the southern edge. And this picture represents how this area was before the war, with the mosque, the new sarai, hammam. And this is the picture today of what has remained. This is one of the areas in the city which has suffered the most serious destruction. We decided in 2017 to come back to the city, and there the needs of reconstruction, what to do. And we decided in consultations with the Ministry of Culture, with the DGAM, of which its Director General Nasr Awad is with us today, we decided to take the central part of the souk. Our criteria in taking this area of the city was not exclusively driven to rehabilitate cultural heritage. What was motivated by the very important economic and social function that the souk plays in the contemporary life of a city. This is indeed, the Aleppo souk is the best preserved medieval souk, or was the best preserved medieval souk in the Muslim world. And that was also one very important reason to choose this as a project. And the project was based in a private-public partnership agreement with the Ministry of Culture, with the DGAM, with the Aleppo's governorate and municipality, and in collaboration with the Syria Trust for Development. What were the difficulties initially? The difficulties are several. In front of this level of destruction, and here in the left, you have the Humayyad Mosque, and in the foreground here, the missing minaret, which has been lost, 100% lost. But the problem there was, first of all, the lack of a specialized workforce. And in collaboration with UNESCO, we organized, first of all, a training exercise to create skilled stonemasons. 40 young people participated. That was held at the Citadel. The course, incidentally, helped also to restore the number of minor impacts that the Citadel had received. And then we counted then with the first trained force to start restoring the souk. There was also the problem of lack of contractors, difficult to access raw materials, but gradually we were able to resolve all these problems. There is one problem which is not yet been resolved, is the fact that all this work has to be done with our own financial resources, because the sanctions imposed into Syria are unfortunately very strict and very effective, and we have not found, up until now, any other co-funding donors for this project. The first thing we did was site damage assessment. What you have into the screen is one of these composite pictures made with drones, millions of pictures of drones about the current, what it was at that time, the current situation of the souk. This site damage assessment, which by the way is available on demand from our office here in Geneva, it has covered in a very precise way each square meter of the city and has allowed to make an assessment of what is the level of damage and even what will be in every sector the cost of reconstruction. We have also produced a catalog of all the most important monuments that require restoration, and it's a catalog that includes the estimated restoration costs and the technical difficulties that exist for each one of them. Here are some of the domes in the souk, in their condition before we started to work, and in the right after completion of the restoration. You can see here the four steps, the four successive steps that were taken in the restoration of the souk. First, the documentation, the precise design of all the restoration activities to be taken on. This is in the left. Then the emergency structural consolidation measures to avoid that further collapse occurs. And then, as you can see, the questions related in the third picture, the questions related to after the restoration of the main structural problems is resolved, the installation of the infrastructure, and then finally the result. This employed a team which is all Syrian, which includes architects, designers, engineers, contractors. You can see here some examples of the documentation made during the construction, and of course had to address the problems that exist in the roofing to begin with, and as the purpose is to return the souk to its original function as a market in consultation with the stake owners, that means the owners of each individual shop, to discuss what will be the finishes, the doors. Here is a picture of the ceilings, and you can see here in the center, that's the space of one of the shops of the souk, and the whole thing was completed with lighting. And today the souk, at least the central part of the souk, already restored, has gone back to its previous life. Let me go back to finish my presentation to the initial plan of the souk. Here is the border of the citadel. In this end is the gate of Bab and Antakya, and what has been completed we will be completing numbers 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So by the end of next year, a very significant portion of the souk will be completed. But the most important thing is not only how much progress we have done in this project. What is important is that that's really in collaboration with our friends from the DGAM, with the governorate, the municipality, and the representatives of the stakeholders. All this thing has created a complete change of attitude in the part of the population that has seen with enthusiasm how the reconstruction of cultural heritage could become a vector of social and economic development. I think my time is over, and if there are any questions, I will be very glad to try to answer. Thank you very much.
Спасибо большое. Есть ли какие-нибудь вопросы?
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. That was the fund of Agaham presents a very good example of how to tackle different restoration problems in combination with social problems and with the proper solution of those. Now, allow me to give the floor now to Mohammed Nasr Awad, chairman of the board of the Department of the Ministry of Museums of the Ministry of Culture of Syria.
Hello.
No.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, come on, we hear you. We hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. We are sorry because the internet is not good and the alKhatib always we have problem. So Mr. Nasr Awad, he said sorry because he have something now. Present something for you. I can. So I will thanks everybody and all the organization of this meeting again, and in particular Professor Brusky from Russia, Mrs. Natalia. We will present something about Palmyra. We're speaking about the restoration of the city. And all you know what's happened in the city. And this picture, can you see the people when they destroy the temple of the king? And also they destroy the tower tomb. From the beginning, the Syrian team from DJI, they start the documentation work. And on the screen, you can see the method that we did. We have collect information about the monument in the city. And also, we did a 3D model for every building in the city. Also, after the second, but when they dash, like the theater. In the museum, from the beginning, also, we arrived, we commanded all the state of the museum before we move anything. You can see the museum before we take the object from this museum. Beyond that, also we commanded it in the city before move it to Damascus, and now it's restored by Khaled. The temple of the bell, also we commanded every details. The arch. But the question, we spoke always about the documentation, and this is the first work we must do in the city. And from the beginning of the work in Palmyra, all efforts is focused on the monument. But nobody think about the illegal excavation in the city. And since 5 months or 6 months, we sent a team to the city. And you can see on the screen the map of Palmyra, and we divide it by zone. And this is example of this zone in blue. You can see on the map a red circle. And this red circle, that is all illegal excavation in the city. And with this work, we divided all information for every part from the city and outside the city. We collect every information about these illegal excavation. As you see in the screen, this in Arabic. And the result of this work, we have around 220 illegal excavation inside the city. And outside in the necropolis, you can see every necropolis. We have West necropolis 55 and other 30 and other 83 and the fourth necropolis 42. And also in this illegal excavation, we find part of statue. They didn't move it. And also in the part they destroyed, they are parts of a fragment, like the tower too. Until now, statue don't move it. And at last, the life of the city and the restored of the Palmyra minimum, they must take in mind the life of the people in the city. When we must think about the restoration, we must thinking about the people. They must come back to the city because we need these people to help us in the operation of restoration. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. We hear you, and now we don't. Так, попало. У нас там прервалась связь или как?
Михаил Борисович, похоже, что это интернет. У них пропал.
Михаил Борисович, я ему сейчас пишу. Я ему сейчас напишу.
Хорошо. Мы можем прерваться в любой момент, как соединиться, и опять вернуться.
Коллеги, у них совсем пропала связь, он не видит моего
Colleagues, the connection is completely broken. Okay. Then let's listen to Natalia Solovyova.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Что-то есть.
Hamam, we hear you. You appeared again. Can you follow more? Hamam? Hamam?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I'm sorry,
Yes,
the
we do.
internet is not good in Syria. Yes, I can hear. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
we can hear you. Come on.
We listen.
yes.
Thank you.
So-
We listen.
So I'm sorry because the technical problem. Okay, so now the question. The last time the DJM signed agreement with a Russian enterprise to restore the Arch of Palmyra. And we agree. The first things we must restore is the museum. But as until now, no work on the file. And if there are somebody want to help us to restore something, some building in the city, we must agree. But this restoration It's not like the people want. For example, I will speak about the Arsh. This person is private to breathe. He presents funding to restore the Arsh. And Mrs. Natalia, she was with us when we discussed, especially for the method of restoration. We asked this Mr. Dimitri is Brusavi. There are two teams. One team from Russian side and international experts. And after that, we must a scientific committee from the expert people. They worked in Palmyra or outside of Palmyra. This committee, scientific committee must supervise the work of restoration. Until now, we discussed the method, how we must restore the Arsh. The Arsh is different from the temple of the Baal and the temple of Baal Shani. Arsh is not explosive. It's destroyed by Baal mechanic, by tricks, as we see. So the block in situ is complete. We start this since 5 months to work on this Arsh, and we find that around 300 blocks. And almost of this block is good situation. Now the question for you, the DJM must also waiting 3 years or 4 years to do something real in the city, or we can help together now to start the restoration in the art. And I will thank for everybody, and to I am sorry if there are problems with the internet. If you hear me, everything I said.
We can hear you, yes. We do hear you. Please go on.
Okay. So the question we need now from your side also to discuss the question of the Arsh, and then also in the same time, if there are something other of the Arsh, we agree that the museum they must restore. And we must don't forget there are also artifacts stolen from the museum, around 3,000 artifacts. And they are also, until now, artifacts in reserve of the Museum of Palmyra. We work on to do the inventory. And thank you.
Спасибо большое.
Oh, thank you very much. No, indeed, we value the heroism of our Syrian colleagues. They do so much to save the monuments at different stages. And now allow me to give the floor to Mr. Hamsad, who will speak on the behalf of the Department of Antiquities and the Museums of the Ministry of Culture.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Well, now we hear you because you have been translating. Now you are speaking by yourself. No?
Hello?
Hello, we hear you.
Hello?
Yes, we hear you.
Yes, now I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you now.
Now you are speaking
Yes.
for yourself. Yeah?
Now I finished my presentation. I want
Oh, that's all.
for
Yeah?
my presentation. And Mr. Nasir, he is not here. There are any question?
So is Mr. Nazir, أستاذ نذير راح يتكلم. Please.
He wants if there are any question. If there are any question,
If there are any
he
question.
can answer.
Коллеги, есть ли какие-нибудь вопросы?
Any questions now? Well, thank you. There are no questions at the moment, but we'll discuss everything that we have listened to a bit later. Thank you very much. And allow me to give the floor now to Natalia Solovyova, Deputy Director of the Institute of the History of Material Culture. She will speak about the different aspects of cultural heritage protection. Thank you, Mikhail Borisovich and colleagues. I would like to
В другую сторону выступления нашего.
Move in a somewhat different direction and to continue with what Hamam Saad talked to us about. And in my presentation, I will first of all speak about the documentation, about the protection and preservation of heritage at the level of documents. And my presentation is entitled Digitize the Heritage of Palmyra and the Steps to Preserve it. We know that the military conflicts, economic activity make it necessary. Так, что...
Ну что, я отключаю тогда?
Меня слышно? Меня слышно или слышно еще других участников? Главными факторами, вот сейчас...
The main factors, if you look at the map right in front of you, then you can see that the map is the territory of Lebanon and Mesopotamia. And we can see that there are about 3,000 monuments already destroyed on this land, and about 56,000 monuments are under threat of destruction. And so the main factors in the process of restoration of the destroyed sites at present is the definition of the degree and the type of impact, and taking measures, the protection of the existing attributes and the development of programs for the reconstruction in order to make sure that the heritage is left for the future generations. The initial assessment of the impact should be carried out as soon as the destructive events take place. It can be preliminary and can be carried out at the time when the main focus of the state is still on the tackling of different structural and humanitarian problems and the security issues. It's very important at the early stage to describe the damage inflicted and to emphasize and to discover the elements of the monuments. And this assessment should carry out the primary definition of the destruction and immediate protection of the surviving elements. And of fundamental importance here is the availability of documentation that records the status prior to the catastrophe. These data should be properly processed, and photographs, aerial survey results. These are all the factors very important for the collection of information and for documentation. The using of drones is very important for 3D models. So this is extremely useful as an instrument for documentation. These data is important not only for the restoration work of a particular monument, but this data can be also used for the development of different programs under conditions of similar catastrophes in different other areas. Usually, the process of documentation, a large number of different organizations is involved. So that means that it's important that they have access to data. There is proper coordination at the local and international levels. The primary assessment should be carried out on the information collected from the available sources of information, using the combination of distance and local studies. The new technologies provide in this sense extensive opportunities, and this information collected and assessed and impact assessment provides us with the preliminary information about the damage and the list of urgent measures to be taken in order to prevent further losses. A very good example of the present-day collection of information and availability of it is the work carried out by the Russian creative work of the Institute, with the idea of aerial survey and the basis of the landscape and architectural 3D models of the present-day status of Palmyra in spring 2016 was proposed by our institute immediately after the liberation of Palmyra. The idea of the Institute was supported by the experts from the Ministry of Culture of the Russian Federation, who in July 2016 visited Palmyra with the purpose of carrying out preliminary assessment of the damage inflicted. According to the results, different measures were recommended preventing further destruction. And number one was the creation of the 3D model of the present-day state of the city. In September 2016 and in September 2019, the expeditions of our institute carried out outstanding work in Palmyra. The purpose was the creation of the 3D digital model of the present-day Palmyra and a recording of all the damages inflicted as a result of the military action. In 2016, military topographers, the Hermitage staff took part in this work, and the equipment was provided by Geostat company. In 2019, together with us, there worked specialists from the Atayan's architectural studio, who carried out the work on the Temple of Bel, and the purpose was also to create a 3D model, and the survey was carried out by the drones. Now here on the screen, you can see the objectives of our expeditions, and here is the area, the whole area of the ancient Palmyra, shot from different heights, and you can see it's all indicated there. And we had 21 square kilometers surveyed, the whole area of the ancient monument. That's 2016, and what we carried out, the survey we carried out in those days, and then 2019, and the same goal set at the time to cover the whole area. As a result of the work of the expedition, we were able to get high precision models, and here the model works, and the metric 3D models of the site and the architectural monuments, detailed photo plans, and the spatial resolution is much better than that of the aerial photos. And on the 3D models, we were able to record the destructions. Let me remind them, the Temple of Bel, one of the photos is the Temple of Bel in 2013, and down below you can see the 3D model shot as it is, the Temple of Bel Shamin, the Triumphal Arch. The upper left corner is the photograph from our architectural archive of 1980, and down below you can see a stop shot from the 3D model. Then the numerous destructions were found at the necropolis, and you can see that there had been looting there. Then they destroyed part of the wall, the fragment of our 3D model, which demonstrates the military trench at one of the walls of Palmyra. And then, of course, the destroyed archaeological museum, and this has already been mentioned many times today. Unfortunately, at the time of the second attack, the theater suffered, and of course the funereal towers of Palmyra. Now, again, you can see here the shots from our archive, and you can see the fragment of a 3D model, and it's quite obvious that these towers almost eliminated completely. So today, the work on the 3D model is completed, and it has been handed over through the internet to the global community. And on the basis of the 3D model, we began to work on the dynamic geoinformation system, Palmyra, so Palmyra in time and space. This model incorporates the photo fixation connected to the site, the orthophoto plans of the locality, and there are the similar plans of all the monuments part of that. These plans specify the topographic plans of the earlier period of time because they have much higher level of resolution as compared to the satellite shots. The digital model of the relief of the whole area is also available, and it provides us with new opportunities to identify the elements of the urban infrastructure, and also important for Palmyra in time and space. And it's all based on the database is absolutely unique. And we brought together different elements which represent different types of information about the history of the city and its present and state. Covers the results of all the previous archaeological and historical surveys in the city. And there's information also about archaeological maps, their characteristics, their dating, the way they have been studied, the presentation of the monument itself, the degrees of the damages inflicted over the last period of time. And the implementation of the Palmyra GIS system is most promising, because this system can be a unique databases bringing together the accumulated knowledge about the ancient city. It is an independent research instrument for the next generation of scholars, and it can be the basis for the planning of the further scientific study of the ancient city of Palmyra. And the geoinformation system and the 3D models can be instruments for the preparation of the restoration work at the monuments, for the planning of different events focused on the protection of the historical heritage. The restorers, without going to the site, can carry out the measurements of the elements, can plan the work of the restorers and the architects. On the basis of the model, it will be possible to design the 3D reconstruction prior to the beginning of the actual reconstruction work. You can see the video of our 3D model, and thus at a distance, without visiting the monument, we can plan the restoration work. And our 3D model allows us to do that. So this geoinformation system and the 3D model, it's not just a monument that records the barbaric destruction of the city, but also a research instrument, which is a universal one, and which is in this respect better than the instruments of the earlier period of time. The data accumulated makes it possible for us to look at the landscape of the monument, to have a look at the city planning in the context of the topography of the ancient city. Thanks to the publications through GIS, these publications turn into an instrument so important for the management of the site. They help to monitor the status of the monument. They help to generalize which we have presented to the global community. It is included into the GIS model, Palmyra in time and space. Now, under the circumstances, we can realize, we should realize that all the elements are at risk, and that's why it is so important to document the artifacts and the sites. in view of the potential destruction, it is necessary to check how well everything is documented. And it's also important to know if there are technical possibilities to search the data and to store the data for short periods of time and longer periods of time. And of primary importance here is the creation of the present day of the advanced databases, which is important for Palmyra and for so many other sites. Thank you. Thank you. That is a very good example of how we're moving towards a new level of technologies for the tackling of different issues important for us. Allow me to give the floor now to Vladimir Nechayev, who is the rector of the Sebastopol State University. Esteemed Mikhail Borisovich, Natalia Fedorovna, and dear colleagues, allow me to welcome all the participants of the Palmyra Day on behalf of the Sebastopol State University, and to let you know that for us it's a great honor to take part in the events associated with the protection of the monuments of Palmyra and a wider topic, protection of the monuments in the Syrian Arabic Republic. My colleague, Dmitry Tatarkov, will make a short presentation concerning our work in Tartus. But let me say to begin with that we believe that cooperation between museums, universities, academic institutes can move the work on the studies of the protection of the monuments to a new level, which has been demonstrated to us just now. And we were happy that, and we are happy that we have been involved in this work. And in Sebastopol University, now on the basis of the 3D model of Palmyra, we are creating a 3D model printed. And we hope that the central part is going to be presented in Russia and possibly in Syria. And today we came up with an idea to have a consortium in the field of digital technologies and archaeology. And a very good example of that is the work carried out by the Institute of the History of Material Culture and its partners. The purpose is to involve the university community into this work in order to make sure that the new instruments of research work are embedded into the practical work at the universities. Allow me to thank the Institute of the History of Material Culture for their work, for the cooperation, and for the data they provided with us. And now I will give the floor to Dmitry Tatarkov, who will speak about our subsea expedition in Tartus. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Good afternoon, Dr. Petrovsky and Dr. Solovyova and Haman. Allow me to speak about the joint archaeological expedition, Russian-Syrian, near the island of Arvat and in the province of Tartus. The expedition was organized on the basis of the agreement signed between the Department of Antiquities and our university on the carrying out of the expedition. So the purpose of the expedition was the search for the new monuments associated with shipping and in the Black Sea area. And we were planning to create a number of databases, connected databases that will take the topic of the Mediterranean shipping and Black Sea shipping to a new level. And this study was a unique study because the area of the Syrian coastal line is extremely interesting historically. It goes back to the Bronze Age. Then in those days, the Syrian land was one of the most important crossroads, cultural crossroads in the land. The Tartus province was the area where there was quite a lot of different towns that existed at the time as Phoenicians, the Greeks, and then the Ottomans. So it was always sort of a hub for maritime communication. So it is the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea, and the number of sites and the monuments are at the coastal line of Crimea, and these can be compared to the monuments we can find in the coastal area of Syria. There are some of the ships sunk at different periods of time. In near Tartus, there was one examined by Tanabe, a Japanese researcher, and we can speak about the similarity of those catastrophes with the vessels, and it became possible for us to work in a joint team, and we examined the area of about 20 square kilometers. There were 3 locations. One was close to the island. Then there was at a deeper area. There were a lot of islands, smaller islands in that area. And then there was one section which was at the coast of Amri city. Most of the effort was focused there. And the overall length that we covered was about 100 miles. The distance, not length, distance, of course. We worked at the depth from 5 to 120 meters. We fixed over 120 underwater sites. With the purpose of their further identification, now we still have to examine them. And where the depth permits, we're planning to do some diving work. Even now, we can say with great certainty that some of the discovered sites and artifacts belong to the sunk ships and to the sunken structures of the ancient period. At present, we work on the database for the archaeological sites on the coast and underwater connected with the history of shipping in the area. We are planning to add them into the navigation programs with a detailed description, and we will tie them up to the coordinates, geographical coordinates, and we will describe them in the historical context, and we'll connect them to the visual image of the data in the digital format. Here you can see number 8. And these are the construction blocks which were found not far away from the Arad Island. And 31, that's the remains of the sunk ship. And if circumstances permit, we will examine those this year. At the suggestion of the Syrian party, we're planning to expand the geography, covering the whole coastal line of Syria. And of course, the purpose is the creation of the global geoinformation platform for the sites of the maritime historical and cultural heritage of Syria. Thank you. Thank you very much. That is most interesting. On the one hand, it's a desert, and Palmyra is at the edge of the desert. On the other hand, it's the coast, and so it's a wide range of different types of works covering different aspects of heritage. Now, colleagues, your questions, your comments, you're welcome. Concerning what you have just listened to or listened to earlier, your proposals are also welcome. If you permit. Dear colleagues, today the conference was most interesting for me. The information makes it necessary for us to think carefully over it. But allow me to share some ideas of mine concerning all this. It seems to me that we should look at the work of our colleagues at the creation of the 3D model, not only from the point of view of an instrument that enables the restorers, together with the architects, to plan the work on the recreation of the monument. But it seems to me that it's also a basis for a scientific component of other types of work carried out at the site. This could also be the necessary material in order to record the fact of the destruction of the site, so that the materials are used in the legal proceedings. And the model might help us answer one other question. What is the image? The image of the Palmyra monument is to be accepted as the model for revival, for restoration. Colleagues, anything else you would like to say? Maxim Borisovich, yes, you're welcome. Colleagues, it seems to me that the second part of our day-to-day is most interesting. And as we go, it seems to me that there is a certain danger here. And let me speak about it so that you all understand what I'm talking about. It's quite dangerous if there is a non-coordinated action and speedy action. If there is a sort of a guerrilla attempt to do something, we shouldn't run ahead of time. No, we shouldn't be in a hurry. Even the best intentions can discredit the idea if those intentions are not carefully thought through. At the same time, we should really start our work with the museum. That is a good idea. And we should begin with simple things, and we should start the work at the sites where the destructions are not that big, the Propylaea, the amphitheater. So we should try to avoid the discreditation, which is very important. And speedy action might lead to that. And that was an idea indeed. We are thinking of asking UNESCO to create a scientific committee for the restoration, for the revival of Palmyra. That's what Mr. Bushnaki spoke, and this is a UNESCO tradition. I think we'll address them officially on behalf of our meeting today. Anyone else? Good afternoon, colleagues. Just a couple of words, if I may. First of all, I'm happy to take part in this most important discussion. You said from the very beginning that our goal is, our objective is to take a well-balanced decision on the basis of the principles of UNESCO in order to decide how to protect the site. And in the Russian terminology, has under this word a lot of different types of work involving survey, involving research, and many other types of work. According to our legislation, the decisions on restoration and conservation should be always based on scientific results of work, on research. So it is necessary to continue this work, the research work, so that the scientific community might take the only possible decision concerning its protection and preservation and conservation and restoration. Thank you.
Михаил Борисович, Александр Всеволодович хотел бы сказать слово.
A few words on behalf of Alexander Всеволодович.
Александр Михайлович завершил свою речь. Problems
with communication with them. Great. Yes, you're welcome. No, thank you very much. Just a couple of words. First of all, I absolutely agree with the idea to begin with the museum, with the restoration of the museum. and simultaneously to begin work on the reconstruction of one of the sites of the town. But for all of that, as Dr. Petrovsky says, we need to work under the auspices of UNESCO so that all the work, all the initiatives go through them. And specifically, I would like to mention an extremely interesting presentation of our colleagues from the Sebastopol University about their underwater archaeological work. And that's most interesting, and I'll be happy to listen to the results of your work further. Thank you. Anyone else, colleagues? Anyone else to comment, to ask a question? If there are none, well, could I say a few words? Now, what we presented today, well, on behalf of the Institute, we would like to propose a document, to propose the similar work of 3D modeling for different monuments. And if for each and every monument there is a set of documents like that, if there is a database on each of them, for each of them, then it will be easier to preserve the information, to store information like that for the future, even if it is destroyed. Could we somehow record this as a result of the meeting? No, we agreed that we come up with some recommendations. 4 of them have already been voiced, and then the 5th one might be the scientific committee under the auspices of UNESCO. And then we could also suggest the following thing. We could address UNESCO and the Syrian government with the request to record to disseminate the methods of recording used for the Palmyra monuments over other monuments and sites requiring restoration and preservation. Does it work? Yes. Right. Yes. We'll word it properly. Yes. Yes. So we add 2 more suggestions, right, as agreed. Anything else you would like to suggest? If not, then I would like to thank all of you. I think today we have been very industrious, and we learned so much. We discussed so many topical issues. And let me remind you of some of the principles we will send over to you. So first, the need to make use of the UNESCO experience for all the work associated with Palmyra. Second, the extensive use of a new generation of technical means so that all the discussions associated with reconstruction, restoration were first of all tested with computer models. Third, the priority of the museum revival as a mechanism for the organization of all the rest of the work connected with Palmyra. And then everything that follows from it. And then coordination with the Syrian government and the public opinion in Syria, in the context of everything that is going to happen in Palmyra and around Palmyra. Then a request to establish the scientific committee between UNESCO and the government of Syria in order to analyze all the suggestions, all the proposals concerning the reconstruction and the restoration, and then the use of the new technologies and the principles of new technologies in Palmyra and their dissemination over the multitude of different monuments of culture under the auspices of UNESCO. So, if you do not mind, this is what we are planning to suggest. And we will also add at the end that some of the ideas voiced here today can be applied to many other monuments that are in the conflict zones. Indeed, we're not going to refer to the Second World War in this context, but anyway, so we cover the conflict zone with these proposals. Anything else you would like to add? So you will receive these proposals on our behalf. Ivan Korneev wanted to say something. Ivan Korneev? Yeah. If possible. I wanted to add that at 5 o'clock in the social media of the State Hermitage, you will be able to see, to watch the opening of the exhibitions at 5 o'clock and then at 5:15. So, right. No, that's what I also planned to let you know. Yes, indeed. We are completing this part of the day, and we move over to the opening of the exhibitions. And so that will be a translation from the social media. The exhibitions, the opening of the exhibitions. That's a difficult procedure indeed. So there will be just curators over there and the camera at the opening ceremony. That's because of the pandemic, of course, yes. Mm-hmm. So I invite you to join the opening ceremony through YouTube. I would like to thank all of you for being with us today, for brilliant ideas, and I'm quite sure that one day we will say that we have done this and that, and all this works so well because we had a wonderful discussion in St. Petersburg. I would like to thank all of you once again. We value your being with us, because time is difficult, but I think it all worked. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank the interpreter. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So here we part for a time being. Right, to the exhibition. And green tea. They say green tea is the best remedy against COVID. Thank you. Thank you.